So the transatlantic slave trade happened because the Arabs had an edge in the trans-Saharan slave trade. In the 16th century, Portuguese explorers were the first Europeans to begin significant direct trade with Africa after the Greek, Roman, and Byzantium era. However, this would not have happened without the Arabic influence at that time. The Arabs have already contacted the Sahel and have effectively established Islam and trans-Saharan trade in many Sahelian kingdoms for centuries before the European arrival. The Sahel is an Arabic word, sāḥil, which means shore, coast, as describing the appearance of the vegetation of the Sahel as a coastline that delimits the sand of the Sahara. The Sahel stretches across the north of African continent between the Atlantic Ocean and the Red Sea. It covers Senegal, southern Mauritania, the Great Bend of the Niger River in Mali, Burkina Faso, southern Niger, northeastern Nigeria, south central Chad, and into Sudan, southern Algeria, Niger, central Chad, southern Sudan, northern and South Sudan, and Eritrea. The Kingdom of Morocco controlled these routes. The Portuguese Christian king Sebastian I led a crusade to take over the Moroccan control, but failed drastically. The Battle of Alcácer Quibir, also known as the Battle of the Three Kings, was fought between the Sultanate of Morocco, the Ottoman Empire, and the Portuguese Empire. The Portuguese had the support of the Moors. The Moors were the Maghreb Muslims, who were inhabitants of the Iberian Peninsula, Sicily, Malta during the Middle Ages. The Moors initially were the indigenous Maghrebine Berbers. This is a history that we often overlook, and they remain the archstone of African history. The Portuguese were defeated and humiliated in this war, which forced the Iberian Union with Spain. The union lasted for 60 years under the Philippine dynasty. This union was essential in financing voyages deemed alternative route to the Sahel. After this war, the Portuguese decided to find other routes into Africa. Before that, human beings were traded for horses and later camels for the trans-Saharan slave trade. On the other hand, the Moroccans decided to descend upon the Sahelian kingdoms. They raided all their valuables before the Portuguese could reach them from below. They took the most precious African kingdom, Gao, and looted it bare using the musket advantage. By the time the Portuguese got there, Africa was in chaos, since the dispersed African warriors have taken to a new interest in the trending religious campaign warfare, jihadism. The transatlantic trade started uncontested. There was barely anything left to trade but trafficking of human beings and slavery. Whether from the north or the south, deceit, religion, and pillage were the culprits in slavery. Both the trans-Saharan and the transatlantic episodes in human history.
Welcome, everybody. It's Thursday, October 22, and we're going to continue the discussion for our class on Africa and the transatlantic slave trade, and looking at, into the theme for the final exam, because remember now we're working towards the final paper. So everything we're doing from this point onwards is going to be useful for you for what you're going to work on for your final paper, with the theme of the 400 years of slavery and the year of return for people of African descent, and also for Africa and Africans in the diaspora. So please put your videos on today for our guest speaker. All right. Let us welcome Dr. Wale Idris Ajibade. He's the Executive Director of African Views Organization, and he's our guest speaker today. We also have Mrs. Beryl Green, who is listening in. And like I mentioned before, many of you came in. A number of people may be joining us during this class session. So if you don't mind to put on your video so we can see your pretty faces. And also, please don't forget to mute your mics if you're not speaking. Thank you very much. And Dr. Wale, you have the floor. I've made you co-host so you can proceed. Let's welcome him with a clap or thumbs up from the reaction button.
Thank you very much, Dr. Remy. It's always a joy to be able to join your class, especially among many other classes that I'm able to participate in the academia. I have experienced your class before, and it's always a delightful class. So it's really a joy for me to be with you today. I greet you all. And thank you for this opportunity to be able to present to you. So you probably already have my bio, so I wouldn't belabor you too much about that. You know that I am the Executive Director of African Views Organization. The organization was founded in Brazil, in Bahia, which speaks volume for what we're about to discuss today. Again, we have a topic today that is a very heavy topic. So I want us all to really prepare ourselves for that. The topic of slavery is a dark part of human history. It's not just the dark part of American history, but really of world history. And some of the things that we are going. Thank you. Yeah, so so some of the things that we're going to do today, I want us to just put it in perspective. We're going to take an approach on the topic of today, the transatlantic slave trade. It's important that we put that in context into three parts. Okay, what it takes in actually capturing a slave, right? And then transporting the slave into the new world, okay? So, and then the management or the existence of the slave trade itself in the new world. So we put it into three categories. That helps us to understand, because a lot of controversy has gone into how exactly the slaves were captured. And much of that controversy still divides us all in the world. So you can see how important that part really is. Okay, so I want us to begin with that. And I have put together some slides. I must apologize. I wasn't able to finish the slide as I wanted to for you. The slide will have some pictures as well as some videos. The videos are meant to just guide you. They are videos of docudrama, so to speak, that were done in the mid-70s and 60s. They were fantastic as they captured the essence of the time. And it would give you some insight as to what might have transpired and how it could have happened. And I think this video is very helpful. So we'll look at some of these videos, there are a bunch of them that I've put together. We'll look at some important ones. I will also give you some resource materials and information so that you can do this research on your own. My job here today is really not to roll out some information for you, but really to guide you as to understanding this information and how to think about it. See, that I believe is the purpose of us educators. So I will begin to share my screen. And I believe to do that, I just have to do this. Let me know if you can see my screen, Dr. Remy.
Yes.
Excellent. That's really fast, actually. And then I will do a slide show that makes it easy for us. Okay, from the beginning. All right. So Africa and the transatlantic slave trade. First, as I mentioned, these are resource material that I've gathered for you. You're going to see some digital collections at the BBC Africa. They have tons of resources. And I got to warn you, when you're looking at these resources, a lot of them are manipulated. So you have to read between the lines, and you have to be equipped enough to do that properly, okay? And that's, some of it are well-intended, some of it are just pure propaganda. And we'll get to why that is in the first place. But this information out there, not all of them are kosher, if you know what I mean, but at least they can begin to guide you as to how you begin to observe this on your own. At this stage, even though there are tons of materials out there, there's still a lot of disparities on much of this information. However, this will guide you, and some of it will talk about just what I just mentioned. So to put it in context, really, we're talking about past, present, and future challenges, right? And it's important because the way we look at the past today is really going to determine how we deal with tomorrow. So it's really important that we have a good understanding of what might have happened and how and in what context. This is incredibly important. So I just put this out there for you to understand that many errors of truth consist merely in the application of wrong names, wrong mindset to things. So if we perceive something wrong, obviously that's how we're going to deal with it, and that everything we say or do about it to have meanings and power, right? So we really need to dig deeper here. Right. Before we go further, I want us to begin with the understanding of what a slave is. This is the matter, right? This is what we want to talk about before we even get to the trade. So what exactly is a slave? You know, you take a look at the dictionary, and there are tons of definitions of what a slave might be. But if you think about it in the right context, you'll see that a slave really is someone or something that is at your behest without any degree of decorum required. I hope you just heard what I said. You know, I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt that said that to really understand the character of a person, you've got to give them power over someone that means not much to them and see how they deal with that. This is important because understand, if someone is at your behest, that means really you can do whatever you want with this person. And if you're not questioned or you're unquestionable about what you do, just imagine that amount of power over another. Now that really is a concept of a slave. Now, before we get to Africa, I want us to look at the world in its entirety. Everywhere in the world, there's been some form of slavery, you know, servitude. It really often comes from having to wage war. You know, we all come from primordial terms where we have all this primordial ancestry. People are just crazy. They bash each other's heads with stones, and then they learn to shoot arrows, and then they you know, grew from there. But their only interest was to conquer the other. That's the only way that they can show their survival. They can ensure their survival. and then we went into the Greek era, and then into the Roman era. Now the Romans changed everything. Okay, it's because the Greek, what they wanted was just pure looting. They just wanted to conquer and loot and and make Greece rich. But Romans were the ones who started colonialism, and they realized that in order to colonize, they need to conquer and dominate. And then not only can they steal what you have or take what you have or get a portion of what you have, but maintain that. It's important. I want us to go back just a little bit. So by doing that, they have to prove superiority over you. And all of Europe was dominated for the most part by the Romans, right? So the Europeans were not strangers to the Africans from the get-go. They have gone into so many wars. Hannibal came across the Alps to fight the Romans, and he almost beat them up. All of that is part of history, and all of that is really just the mindset, the notion of the time. But that enmity, especially between the African warriors against Rome, is where that sort of strong hatred started developing. Now, don't forget, the Romans, in their nature, were really very dominant and extremely classist and racist to everybody else that is not Rome, even the Europeans, even the Brits, okay? So, and you've got to understand, because of their nature of colonization, they developed into those other societies that they conquer and dominate. It became a territory, they grew into that, they grew family, they became kings, whatever the case may be. So the Roman heritage continued, and that has become a nature. While classism still exists in all parts of society, especially in Europe, even at that time, what grew the interest of the people was to find something that could give everyone else a sense of equity. You got to understand this that I'm saying. Yes, in Africa, for instance, there's been many waves of invasion, whether it's from Egypt, whether it's from the Assyrians or the Persians or the Arabs, different waves that have come, pushing people out of Egypt, Kemet at that time, and also out of Nubia or Ethiopia, whatever the case may be, pushing them further down. And several centuries after that, the African kingdoms developed and became very, very strong. And that culture continued because it got influenced by religion, and religion became an impetus to actually look for other societies to dominate and bring them this new religion. Okay, the whole purpose of this spreading of religion is trade and economics, but we won't discuss that today. But however, you will see part of that in the transatlantic slave trade. So way before the transatlantic slave trade happened, from the desert, from the inland, you've always had great incursion of the Arabs spreading Islam. Okay, and this is not to say even before then there had not been contacts with Africans and Europeans. That has always been there, as mentioned. Don't forget, it was Alexander the Great that carved out Alexandria in Egypt, and what was important to understand here is that even then, the Europeans and the Greeks essentially considered Africa a peaceful place. And the name Africa actually came from that, which is Afrique, meaning a warm and a peaceful place. So it was always easy to conquer the Africans and to invade them, and they had tons of resources anyway, and they, the spiritual people, so they really not likely warriors, until much later when they learned to defend themselves rigorously. However, the transatlantic slave trade itself started because of the essential competition between Europe and the Middle East, really essentially between the religions. At this time, Islam and Christianity. Don't forget that it was Christopher Columbus, or Amerigo Vespucci, of course, in the case of America, but Christopher Columbus that discovered, so to speak, for the Europeans, the American continent, while searching for India in order to trade. Okay, they did not know that America existed, right? So the reason that he discovered it is because he wanted to find another route that is not waylaid by all the competitors, whether it's the Huns or the Assyrians or the Persians or the Arabs, to find another route to India in order to trade, right? And that's how they landed in America and realized that this is, in fact, when they first landed, they thought they were in India. However, they realized that this is new territory, but they insisted on calling the people Indians because they've already started doing so. So what the hell of changing, there might be anything else anyway. Now, we need to begin to put all of this in context because it's something that's going to change Africa forever. However, as mentioned, slavery has been going on in Africa way before then because of the jihadism coming from the northern part, coming from the desert. That has always been going on. So some of the African kingdoms are already quite aware and defensible, or haven't made themselves strong against this type of incursion. However, while they were familiar with the jihadists from the north, they were not quite familiar with the new European incursion coming from the shores, from the southern parts of Africa, through the oceans. Now, before we go on, as mentioned, just to I think it's important to just quickly mention about David Walker. David Walker was a great American, and he had asked when he contemplated the notion of emancipation, that why is one a slave? He asked, why am I a slave? Why are some people slaves and some masters? In fact, why are some people white and why are some people black? Because no person ever wakes up in their environment and say, hey, look at me, I'm white. I mean, if everybody around you is the way they are, you don't consider yourself anything else but that, right? And that may not be white or black. So it is this encounter, and not essentially well-meaning term of endearment, to make a reference of maybe salutation or representation that caused this dichotomy, this disparity that begins then or even before and continue to plague us today. So again, I will share this slide with you, so we're not going to go too much about it, but that's some of the things that we need to understand, because he argues here, because in finding out the true solutions of the matter, it was not a matter of color, but a matter of crime. Not God, but man, that afforded the true explanation of the existence of slavery. Nor was I long in finding out another important truth, vis-a-vis what man can make, what man cannot make. And that's important. What a man can make, a man cannot make. And that's really the point of learning about this so that we understand it enough to grapple with it and to make the world a better place. Otherwise, knowledge is useless. Okay, all right. So again, I'll share this slide with you at some point, and we'll go through it. So when it comes to capturing a slave, first of all, we've got to look at things in today's terms. You know, one society or community or people oftentimes go into war with each other for whatever reason, right? And then there are war captives. So what do you do with war captives? We've seen it in the Second World War. You know, you have all these war captives. Gosh, what do you do with them? They're dangerous. If you let them be, they might turn against you. And then if you keep them, you have to share your ration with them, all of that thing. So if they're not worth of, you know, if you don't have a place to keep them, you don't want them to turn back against you, and you don't want to share your ration with them. Oftentimes, this is why a lot of all these war crimes occurred, because they just often had to shoot them up, right? So, and we saw in the advent of Second World War, or during the Second World War, where many innocent people were rallied up just because of hatred, okay? And they were made into slave, right? They were made into slave by making them work all types of jobs that they could possibly, whatever they could get out of them for value, and they have no interest in keeping them, obviously. They were going to exterminate them, so they might as well extract anything they possibly can of value from them. So we begin to see how really slaves can be acquired, and it's no different around that time. So again, from those who are going about spreading religion, at that time essentially Islam, and then later Christianity, you begin to see why and how it's easy to do this. Now, in local terms, obviously, people who have waged war against themselves and have remnants of slaves within themselves, they have all this problem as well. Do we exterminate them? Do we let them be? Or do we just set them loose amongst ourselves? So you have those who will keep, you know, embracing them, and you have some who are exterminating them, and then you have some who were enslaving these people. Now, when the Europeans came, the Portuguese, I believe, were the first on the ground in Africa. And if you see, there's this proximity as well, and they were very good sailors. So they, yeah, be on a mute. Okay, so they, if someone wants, if you have a question, you may raise your hand, and Dr. Remy, please keep an eye on that so I can pause and give an answer to any of that. Right. So, so again, as mentioned,
Jamar, do you have a question for Dr. Wale?
No, not yet. I'm going to wait to ask it.
Okay, all right. So if you're not speaking, please mute your mics, okay? Thank you.
Sorry about that. It was an accident.
Yes.
Thank you. So yeah, so as you can see here in this picture, and again, much of these archives, even though they're drawings, they really make best attempt to replicate actual incidents. So you can see, I want you to pay attention to the disparity, the oppositions. For instance, here you can see people with bows and arrows and people with guns, and the only difference, what really made the difference here are the guns against the arrows. It happened everywhere. This really was the history of Africa, but it's also the history of indigenous people everywhere. You know, the Europeans haven't been so experienced in war. You know, constant war over centuries have developed such weaponry that is unmatched. That's why the Romans were formidable and nobody could stand or match them. And that's why they spread it everywhere. Okay, and don't forget, when they spread and dominate, then they recruit soldiers from that locality and train them as well, which was eventually their detriment. But just to understand that, right? And the Romans, the Arabs too, faced off, regularly with the Romans. As a matter of fact, they learn a great deal from the Romans. That's another story, and how they waged their own wars over there. But when they came to Africa, they had all these guns, and so they often the African restraints were no match for them. So they.
Hi, Dr. Wale. Cecilia has a question for you.
Sure, go ahead.
Africa
Yes, please.
is seen as a peaceful place to other nations, but Africa didn't see other nations as a threat, but it saw its own people within the continent as a threat.
Yeah, so because of the time, that question is very deep. By nature, Africans are peaceful. They have to be, because they're very spiritual people. So spirituality has always been part of their heritage. And if you look at the names of many, the true names of many tribes in Africa, you find their true meaning. You'll see that it has to do with spirituality and peace. And that's something that they've established in Kemet for a long time. But the Europeans are different. They've known wars. They've known many wars, way before any recent wars of the world. They have always waged so much wars. I mean, they always kick ass, and that's why they always had to continue to develop their weaponry. The Africans were just camping. There was laxity and comfort and all of that. And when they displaced, this is one thing. When Africans are displaced, it takes long time for us to regroup, because the trauma is always extensive. So that makes us by nature a little bit, how do I put it, accommodating, well, not accommodating with suffering, but coping. We always are able to cope. And because of that, the Europeans perceive this as thick skin for enduring pain, which really led to why they preferred Africans after much more desired slaves. This is very interesting, because they didn't get that with the Native Americans, though they tried. Because of course they came to America first, so why not just take the Native Americans and put them as slaves, which they tried to do, but they failed largely because the Native Americans would just die for many reasons, and we'll get to that. So, sure. So in Africa, because of this, of course, I mean, wars also, that doesn't mean the Africans don't wage war between themselves. Of course they do. They just don't wage in such proportion as the Europeans. They do wage wars, and they did it differently. They don't kill the entire society, or it happens. There are many, and which is why they also had some kind of refugee trade, slavery system in their on the land. But much of that had to do with indentured servitude. Okay, not until again slavery became something of great importance. And this happened again because when Europeans came, they were quick to bond with some of the strong empires. Europeans are quick learners. They can recognize a strong empire, and they bond with this empire by gifting the empire a great deal of gift and finding ways to go inland. And when they go inland, much of these many things were at their disposals, including recruiting and training people who were going to be scouts for them in order to begin to retail slaves. It's important that we put that into question, that we put that into context. You know, a lot of people argue that, oh, Europeans don't know anywhere. When they came, they couldn't go inland. They had to send some Africans. Yes, it is indeed true. But the fact that they couldn't go inland is completely far from the truth. That's not true. Europeans like to discover things, and they went even places in Africa that Africans themselves have not been. They would go and say they discovered this and they discovered that, and they were crazy about that. And it's all written and noted everywhere. Oh, John Doe discovered this and James Joe discovered that, etc. So there are rivers everywhere, so they could move, whether inland or these, and they, they're quickly easy to cajole people to help carry their luggages by, bonding with the greater power there. Whether it's a king or a chief or whatever the case may be, who would say, oh, you nice guys, I got people to help you. You go inland and do whatever. And that's all how it started, you see.
Dr. Wale, Jama Watson has a question for you.
Sure. Go ahead, please.
Jama?
Jama. You may have to unmute.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was trying to figure out how to work this thing. So I just have a question in relation to, you mentioned that the Europeans were more readily equipped to enter Africa because they had the possession of guns, which is kind of revolutionary in terms of conquest for all nations across the world. But I know from doing some reading with Northrop that he mentioned that, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but Africans, were trading slaves for guns because they began to realize the importance of it. So my question is, how come they weren't using it as widely as the Europeans were?
That's a good question. And so let's put this in context. So don't forget, you have African empires, right? And those empire, and what it means to be an empire is to be able to control other sub-societies, right? So there might be a society somewhere that the empire has problem with, say, maybe controlling that society because they are formidable, they are resistant, whatever the case may be. So when these Europeans came and said, look, you got guns and stuff like that, and, for this empire, that little society is expendable. Okay, and oftentimes they would use, they would go with the Europeans to conquer this society, okay, and take many of them as slave. For the Africans, they really didn't have much idea about what Europeans need a slave for, other than to do small jobs, carry this, carry that, do small, things that they would do in their own culture and understanding. Okay, but Europeans have a different, complete agenda, which is where the slave trade came in. So the empires, some of them, not all of them, got guns. As a matter of fact, they usually would give them half good guns, right? Or outdated guns and things like that, weaponry that are just for show and things like that. And they suffered a great deal for it, because many of them realized later that all of this was not right, and they rebelled. And by the time they tried to do that, it was too late. They already built forts like this. And everywhere in the slave coast of Africa, you will find very strong forts that is still standing over 500, 600 years of existence. They have built all of these there. And so you got to imagine if someone's coming to establish this strong fort in your home or your homeland, you know that they have control. And oftentimes there was little that people could do. They pretty much took over. I mean, which was why colonialism had to follow. But anyway, so what's important to know is that not one single African that we could imagine really got rich from slavery. It was impossible. Because first of all, there wasn't some kind of currency that they could trade with, right? So it's always been maybe, as mentioned, guns, in some cases, fancy things like mirror or clothings, or umbrellas for some cases. I mean, it was terrible barter. And again, that exchange was not something that was fully understood, while the Europeans were actually trading these and making money. And don't forget the power of persuasion of the Europeans from the get-go. And they have the backing of a government. So this was a huge corporate enterprise. It was booming industry where you have all kinds of paraphernalia, or equipment to hold the slave. Don't forget, if you are going to enslave someone, I mean, you have a captive here, right? You still have to turn them into a slave, and that takes a process. It's a long process of demoralization. It's a long process of dehumanization, denigration, to the point where the person breaks. It's like breaking a horse. Some of us have seen that perhaps in different movies. It's not too different here. And slaves who resisted are made example of by maybe maiming them or killing them or whatever the case may be. There are tons of stories about that. As mentioned, I really was still working on these slides for you guys, and I'll try to finish it and share it with you. So here you can see the tributaries of different rivers in Africa, which allowed Europeans really to travel fast inland. They had very sophisticated boats that could go around here. So they often, set expeditions that they would go on in order to go inland, know where people are, convince the people. I mean, they knew how to work it. So through that time, they did a lot of maps of Africa. And over the period, Africa took so many different names before it became Africa. This is another example of forts that were being built and how slaves were marched into it. So
I'm sorry, I just have a question. So you did mention that Europeans made it easy, like it was easy for them to get into the empires. Why, I guess my question is, why is it that it was so easy for them if they came in with weapons and things like that, that the Africans didn't really know what, about them so much? So what made it so easy? It wouldn't be something that they'll be like worry about, in danger of, why are they bringing this stuff? What do they do? I guess that's my question.
yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so your question is, why aren't the Africans aware of the European incursion? Why are they suspicious? Why aren't they prepared? Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, because it's like, okay, they came in with this stuff, but then at the same time, the Europeans were, like you mentioned, it was quick for them to get along with the rich empires. Weren't those be the ones that were more in aware and prepare for for
So
people like that?
got it, but it's the same everywhere. And don't forget, that's why I told you the story of the Romans. The Romans did the same in Europe. The same exact thing happened in Europe. So it's not because of the Africans are unaware. This is really just a human feat. People who, there are people who are not completely organized into that a solid nation or society that comes under an empire, right? Don't forget, the empire is only as far as it reaches. And even within the empire, there are certain groups who do not consider themselves part of the empire, right? So they're not protected by the empire. because they don't pay taxes to the empire, whatever the case may be, or they're rebellious. So to those people, they are at odds with the empire. And if the empire has any reason to go against them, or has any opportunity to go against them, probably will do, right? The same thing happened in Europe. That's why the Romans were able to conquer everyone and dominate. And the same thing is what was going on in Africa. Now, when the Europeans came, they didn't show aggression at the beginning. The aggression came much later. See,
Okay.
so they and the Africans are not often directly hostile. So they're like, oh, strangers come, let's drink up, let's party. What's going on? Who are you? Where are you from? That kind of thing, right? Oh, I got this for you. Oh, wow, this is great. This is a nice stranger. And then everything starts from there.
Okay.
See, you don't know that somebody has, is targeted you and is coming to you with an exploitative intention.
True.
And by the time you know that, it's too late. And that's really what happened here. That's what happened everywhere, even in South Africa. So, but also don't forget the Europeans, because over the years have fought against themselves, between themselves, for all these reasons, and all of a sudden they found something, a target that is easy for any one of them to beat upon and take advantage of, without having to fight each other directly, even though they started fighting over that. Right. Even then, once this trade started to roll, and people are getting so much resources and human beings and mineral resources and all kinds of things and produce and stuff like that, then they started to envy themselves, and then they started to fight against themselves. Much of this fight was done in Africa, and much of it also in the diaspora. But for the most part, they came to an agreement at some point that it's crazy. Why are we fighting all of this? Well, there's enough for everyone here. Why don't we just agree not to fight each other, but rather let's apportion all of these to ourselves, and everybody's happy, which they did much later. So, and it goes without saying that both the First and the Second World War was about Africa. If you need to know more about that, you should check my papers on academia. You know my name, you could Google it. And you'll see much of this there. Anyway, so I want us to highlight a few things. So there are, as mentioned, there are people who might have been collaborators, and collaborators were on all sides, both here in the New World as well as in the Old World then. And much of these are people who are trained, maybe a slave that is taken, trained, and then brought back because of the affinity, because speaks the language or understands the people better, diplomat. And many were like that. One of them is this fellow here by the name of Bishop Ajayi Crowther, who was a Christian, and he had to translate the Bible into the African language. And the Bible was very good in helping to make the slave. So because once you've acquired a slave, you need to, make the slave, right? Once you've acquired a prisoner, you need to make the slave. So in order to make the slave, you need to feed the slave, either beat the slave to submission. Oftentimes it becomes no value or less valuable because of the damage done to the slave. So newer methods were acquired as to maybe instill some religious fear, or into the mind of the person, and makes the person a little more obedient. This is also another fellow here who was also a collaborator. This fellow was in Brazil as a child. He spoke Arabic. He had dealt with the Arabs for slavery and all kinds of things like that. And then he was then taken a slave and started to speak Portuguese as well. And because he could speak Arabic, Portuguese, and some African languages, he became very useful to all the slave traders. And he understood how to the use of money rather than just barter. He did quite well for himself, but not significantly to make any difference. Much of what he did attracted some of the kings, and he dealt with some of the kings. And it's important to know that many kings all over Africa fought against themselves for kings who supported or were collaborators of this era. And there was many wars between them, and oftentimes the Western counterpart would come and support the king that supported their interest, and you know how that would end until the end of slavery. After slavery, all of that shifted. So that really is the beginning. Now, I want us to go to this right here, and this is a little movie that I'll show to you. I hope all the elements that I expected is there. And let's see.
Down here, the dungeon is for the men. So a minimum of 600 normally kept here until the ship came and they took them to Europe and sold them for the hard work. They have different places where they keep the females. So you go there and see the place. After that, you go to Gate of Mauritania. Some of the Europeans, they misbehave. Some also go to town and play. So you can go inside, go in.
You have light inside?
Well, this was the European.
First two pipes. So they get to the dance gate first. And from here to this side, they pack it with blocks. So this is where, that is what they
So 500 years ago, 600 years ago, these guys already know practice.
Yes, the water, they have the rainwater, they have this metal ball.
No, I know.
It's a metal ball called cannonball. Cannon. It was 8, and the chain attached to all of them. Chains, shackles, attached to all of the 8 balls. When the government refused to go, they hang all the 8 around your leg, your arms, they choose you from it. You will be lying here, cry, until you can't believe it, and you die. That time the rest will go back to the dungeon. The time that this one was iron, they'll be behind the bars, seeing you dying. He does that so that it scares you. Anytime that I have to call you, then you have to comply. So many, our sisters and mothers died here.
It means you don't go to Europe again.
But they love their children. They will bring their children to the castle to be educated. You see, the men are very aggressive, very strong. So you cannot come inside. They give them food. So they throw their food from up to down. Food. Yeah, food. They give you food. They drop their food because the men are strong. If you come inside, they can even go fishing. So they will force all the ladies to go down here to the gate of no return. Today, we are going to use the male slave dungeon to the gate of no return. So they bring a boat here and take them and their bigger vessel on the sea. So what are all these boats? These boats in some of Africa, even Ghanaian, Libya, and ancestors of it, some dining. So they bring this one, some of them call addition. Some of them bring it as exhibits. Those who lost their life. About 2-3 months ago, United States of America, Speaker of Parliament, Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, she was here.
She came here.
Yeah.
With a group of people, about 40 people.
Yeah.
African, American.
There's a whole waiting out there for you.
They beat you with a gun bat.
Oh, so this is where they drop them?
Yeah, this is where they pass the boats.
Oh, but you.
They are all in chains. You are taking them to the ship.
So they drop them to the boat from here.
This is the gate of no return.
Yeah, this is the gate of
No, you can't go to the
More than to ammonia ni kesi cry.
So now when you're crying from sorry. Okay, did you know my
sad. I don't have any thoughts.
Well, it's a very, very sad place that's hard to understand. You know, I'm just thinking, how is it even possible to have a church here in the middle of this place?
Okay, really?
People are sometimes difficult to understand.
What we have today is the opportunity to make our presence on earth count. We have inherited all of this, whether it's mess or good. It is in our hands to do the best we can with it.
They made a family, and as a family to keep 2 slave cells to remain originally as it were when the compound was established in the 1840s. Now this compound was established precisely 1840, but when they built the compound, it was not built with bricks. The compound was built with bamboo initially. It was in 1847 they built this compound with bricks. Bricks that were brought from Liverpool, England. So for those of us who have heard of Liverpool, you must understand that the wealth of Liverpool was built on the slave trade. Most of the slave ships that were built that time were built in Liverpool. But the irony of it all now is that when you get to Liverpool, it will be difficult for you to find blacks around. For originally there used to be so many blacks there. Well, I don't know, but there's a way they did it, and they destroyed all blacks, and there are no blacks. You can count them that live in Liverpool. But the wealth of Liverpool was built on the slave trade. Now, the man on this compound is called Slave William Tabal. But when his father and mother gave birth to him, that was not his name. His birth name was Ifaremi Lepo. His father's name was Fagbemi, but he was a slave. Think about it, he was captured at the age of 6 years old by the Dahomeans. The country we call Benin Republic today used to be known as Dahomey. Dahomey was taken to Benin Republic in 1971. Now, when he was taken to Dahomey, the first person who owned him as a slave in Dahomey was called Abbas. His first owner was Abbas. Abbas sold him to an European by the name of William. Now, Mr. William used to come from Brazil to buy slaves from Abbas in Dahomey. You see, this Mr. William, by his name, there's a tendency that he's not really from Brazil. Probably he was a slave trader who had a good business going on for him in Brazil. So, he used to come from Brazil to buy slaves from Abbas in Dahomey. Okay, so This man became a Muslim through his first owner endowment called Abbas. Abbas endowment was a slave trader and an Islamic scholar. But later, Abbas sold this man to Mr. William, who took him to Brazil. But then in Brazil, Mr. William realized the child was an unusual child. So he sold this other slave but took him to his house and made him a domestic slave. Domestic slaves work in their master's house, plantation slaves work on the farm. And the man treated him well. He taught him how to write, he taught him how to read. And that time, it was illegal for you to teach your slave how to read and write. But his owner taught him how to read and write. And the boy himself was so smart that through Mr. Williams and the friends of Mr. Williams, he learned how to speak English, Dutch, Portuguese, and Spanish, which was unusual for a slave. So when he became a young man, Mr. Williams met him and said, "Look, I'll give you your freedom, but on one condition, you work for me." And he responded by saying, "Sir, I'm your slave. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do for you." So whenever Mr. Williams go to buy his slaves, he was taking him along. It got to a time that Mr. Williams was no more going to buy those slaves, he was sending him as his agent. That was how this man became a slave trader, working for Mr. Williams. Later he left Brazil. The first place he settled down was called the colony of Lagos, that we call Lagos Island today. He settled down around that area called Ofe, Isaleko. And I'm talking to you, you see how they say that at Ofe? They have houses at Ofe, they have houses at Idumota and Balogun. Some of his descendants in Lagos Island, some of them bear Abbas as their family name, some of them bear Williams as their family name, and some of them bear Seriki as their family name. But later, he left Lagos Island to go and settle down here. When he got to this town, he met people here. But you know what? He dominated every one of them. He had power over every one of them. The question is, how was he able to do that? Did he come with his gangsters, with guns? No. He was able to dominate them because he could read, he could write, he could speak the European language. And according to history, we're meant to understand that he is someone that you trust easily. People trust him easily. That's how everywhere he went to, people have something about him. He was intelligent. If you do business with him, you guys will make a lot of profit. He will smile, and he won't cheat you. So you go tell somebody else, "Man, that guy, I did business with him, and I made a lot of money." You see, he will use his intelligence to make money. So before you knew it, he became endeared to everybody. So everybody wanted to be associated with him. Before you knew it, he became a very, very big don. In the year 1895, the British made him the paramount ruler, the political ruler of the whole Badagry district. Now, I didn't say Badagry, I said Badagry district because the Europeans added other places to this town, and he was ruling on their behalf. For instance, he was, I don't know if you passed through National Art Theatre when you were coming. Okay, in Uptown Lagos, around the Vitimenta coastline. He was ruling as far as that territory and further interland as far as Ilaro. Now, there's a place called Ilaro in Ogun State today. Now, the Ilaros, the Egbados, he himself originally was born around that corridor. Now, the Egbados used to be under the Egbas from Abeokuta. But you see, the Daomians were coming to take them as slaves, to take the Egbados because they are very close to the Daomians, where this one was born originally. Okay? They were coming to take them as slaves. And the Egbas were so, because they were under the Egbas were supposed to protect them. So the Egbas themselves were doing anyhow. They were even taking them and selling them as slaves. So at the end of the day, they organized themselves and they made the British say, "We prefer we are under you guys and you can protect us than for us to continue to be under the Egbas from Abeokuta." So what the Europeans now did is that they accepted and they sent their cannon guns and they added the whole of that territory to the district that this man was. So he was controlling the whole territory for them because they can trust him. When we get inside, you see the picture that he took in 1895 when the British made him the ruler of his town. He founded 2 towns in Yoruba. There's a town called Ayetoro, not far from Ilaro. Take about founded Ayetoro in 1902. Now, we took this picture at Ayetoro about. It's a statue of Seri Baba. He was the first ruler and he was the founder. He was ruling this town when he was ruling Ayetoro. He founded another place called Idogo. Idogo is a railway town. Okay, we used to hear Okoridogo. So he was the first person to own a lorry in the western Yoruba land where we have the Egbados. His lorry used to fly Ayetoro to Abeokuta, so it was his lorry that was first called Okoridogo. And others began to have such lorry and they called it Okoridogo, but it was his own lorry that was first called Okoridogo. Okay? Now he was a slave, but he achieved all that while he was here. Now he himself was born around that territory Now, the Egbados were highly displaced by the Yoruba Civil War and the slave trade. So he gathered the Egbados together and he founded a place for them and he called the place Ayeto in 1902, meaning the world has become peaceful again because we were destabilized by the slave trade. We'll talk about him later. But some of the items we have behind you were used in exchange for slaves. And we have some of them here in the right grade that you see. I don't know if there's a slave trader here, but during the slave trade, the value of an umbrella was 40 slaves. And we still have one of such umbrella given to Senegal. But you see, the umbrella is still for sale. But do you know what the difference is? That you don't want 40 men. Just give me 10 women.
12.5 million unwilling migrants who had been sold into slavery in exchange for European trade goods. A set of complete plans has survived for just one of these ships. The ship was the Aurore, which left La Rochelle in France on August 28, 1784, bound for the African coast. The captives it obtained there were taken to Saint-Domingue, now Haiti, in the Caribbean, and sold to the owners of sugar and coffee plantations. We close in just before the ship arrives on the African coast to get a clear view of the conditions that approximately 600 captives had to endure on their 2-month middle passage to the Caribbean. The Aurore was a typical 18th century slave ship. The main deck shows 2 key features designed to control the male slaves. First, the barricado, a 9-foot high wooden wall that divided the ship in 2. This was topped with spikes and swivel guns. Second, 2 iron chains can be seen running along the upper deck. Every morning, the crew brought the shackled male captives up onto the deck from the spaces they had slept in overnight. The crew locked the maid's shackles into the chain to restrict movement. African men were not only chained in place, but continually within the firing line of the swivel guns. African women and children were imprisoned behind the barricade, normally unshackled, where they could neither see the men nor speak to them. Fearful that the male captives might escape their chains and try to capture the ship, the majority of the crew also remained behind the barricade. We descend from the quarterdeck to the officers' quarters and galley. A cook prepared the slaves' food in this boiler. The captives' diet consisted mainly of starch such as rice, beans, or flour. Enslaved people were forced to eat this monotonous diet twice a day. They drank just 2 pints of water daily, leading to constant and often deadly dehydration. As the sun began to set, the crew, armed with whips and guns, forced the slaves below deck. The space below was divided by wooden walls to keep the men and women separated. The men were released from the deck chains and forced below, still shackled in pairs. Once below deck, crewmen packed the enslaved men together. Some were forced to lie on top of the platforms around the side of the room. Others lay under the platforms. Each captive, on or under a platform, slept in a space just 14 to 18 inches wide and 30 inches high. Most were forced onto their sides and pressed against their neighbors. Others sat in their meager intervening spaces. The Aurore's prisoners spent at least 14 hours in such cramped, dirty, and stifling conditions which they endured daily for 2 or 3 months before reaching the Caribbean. We have no contemporary depictions of the Aurore's 600 captives as the vessel left Malimba to cross the Atlantic Ocean. We do, however, have an image of a cramped lower slave deck painted on a voyage of a smaller slaver, the Marie Séraphique, from just a few years earlier. This comes into view in an overlay as the camera zooms out. The overlay shows only 340 captives, while the Aurore carried almost twice this number.
Christ, what a stink, Captain. What did you bring, a cargo of rotten meat?
What do you mean? This is all prime beef. They stink because they eat like pigs, then they vomit all over themselves.
Long voyage?
95 days from the Ivory Coast.
Don't you ever take them up on deck for a little fresh air?
With all the frigates nosing around these waters like hungry dogs. Times have changed, Mr. Sims, now that our damn Yankee government considers this cargo contraband. If they catch me with even one nigger on board, it's up the rope I go, and I wouldn't be the first.
They're bound to rot away down there in that cesspool.
Not on your life. Aboard my ship, hygiene's the rule. That means a clean ship, clean cargo. When one of them gets took bad, I don't wait till he plagues the others. No, sir. It's into the brining with them then and there. Captain Wicks delivers the goods in perfect condition. Anyone will tell you that.
How many head you got?
326, including the wench. This batch is all stallions. No syphilis, and they've all busting with seed. But look how rested they are. I travels in comfort. Each one got a space 6 foot by 2 foot. Why, they can even turn around. Real stallions. Every night they so hot for pleasure, and they all humping each other like a pack of dogs. And chains don't stop no how. In here's the wenches. All of them got pups, and near all is pregnant again.
How many?
112. You go $300 each?
You touched, Captain? You know I don't buy by the head, I buy by the pound.
Oh, all right. Say $200.
By the pound, I said. Hey, what are you doing, drowning them?
I told you. Rule number 1, hygiene. 3 showers a day. Salt water kills their fleas and lice.
Then you wring them and hang them out to dry, I reckon. God almighty, what a pest hole. That's diarrhea. Just busting with health, ain't they, you old pirate?
It happens now and then. But we know how to cure it.
The usual cure?
It's the oldest and the surest. Sugarcane plug, oakum, and tar. And bam, ram it in hard. Keeps the bowels locked up tight and the soul from escaping from the back door.
How come he don't blow up?
Cork will pop out first, just like a bottle of champagne.
Hey, what's that slop?
Well, that's molasses and beef grease. Diggers goes crazy for it. Have to truss them and feed them a little at a time, otherwise they choke themselves on it.
Looking at him, you wouldn't think so.
That one, he's taken it into his head to starve himself to death. A real pitiful case. Hey, Doc, chisel, hammer, and funnel. Go ahead and serve dinner. All right, let's say $150 a head.
You just breaking wind again. By the pound, I said. The whole cargo at $1 a pound.
$2.
$1.25.
$1.75.
$1.50.
So, I'll regret it, but it's a deal. Well, nothing else to show you. 1 sugar cane per head, and I take back their personal effects for my next cargo. Naked I bought them, and naked I sell. All hands ashore. You too, gentlemen. The voyage is over.
How can it be? The ship hasn't made port.
And she ain't a gunner. Too many busybodies ashore.
Keep moving. All right, man. Come on. Keep moving. Watch how you swing that hammer, Mr. Watkins. All right, come on there. Keep moving. Watch how you swing that hammer, you black...
Where are they taking them? Benson Parish, the end of the line. From there they start the long march through the wilderness.
What shall we do? Follow them?
No. We'll wait for them at the swamp outside of Baton Rouge. Oh, we'd better hurry up, though, before the rainy season begins.
Now, from the railhead, the caravan proceeds on foot toward the great slave markets.
Hey, what's that red flag?
The red flag is a symbol of slavery.
That's so. And the band?
To keep up their morale, so they'll make a good appearance when they arrive at the market.
Come on! All right, everybody, let's have some music. Some music, yeah? Something lively. Fine, everybody. Ah, that's
Ite cum gratia Dei, by the grace of God you're free. Ite cum...
These extraordinary creatures, neither man nor beast, that ask to be part of our world. They're as old a race as we, and yet until yesterday they'd never seen a wheel. And their future, they have no future, as they have no past. Tomorrow, as today, slavery will be their only possible privilege. What could they ever do if they don't live in the reflections of our glory and profit by the crumbs from our well-laden table?
He's a steal.
300?
400, man.
No, you can keep him then.
Step right up, folks. Don't lose a chance of a lifetime. $1. $1 only. You may win prizes worth $15,000. Roger, cavalry, mulattoes, wings from Ivory Coast, gold, Virginia. Only a few tickets still available, so hurry, 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 and win yourself a fabulous prize for just $1. Step right up, folks.
Here's the chance you're waiting for.
Sensational low prices in this clearance sale. The best flags in the country going for buttons. Step right up, folks.
Follow yourself to them practically nothing.
Kindly observe them shows, ladies and gents. Every one of them priceless.
Wait to see such a...
Buy one and get
$1 ticket.
Look at that.
They may be yours.
Just look at that black meat. 65 to 68 pounds. Need about another 5 pound weight, about a 10 cups on it.
You never mind adding no more weight.
All right, son. The customer always right. Shall we settle for, let's say, 170 pound of a sort of pickaninny?
All right.
Look at these Spaniards. Inspect them real close. Horse green, full of seed. Just look.
At this point, let me remind you that God condemned to slavery the damned posterity of Canaan in the days of Joshua.
God ordained by express statute to Abraham's posterity that they should buy slaves, and decreed that those slaves would be a perpetual inheritance for their children. God recognized Abraham as the owner of slaves he had bought, commanding him to circumcise them. And Jesus ordained that whosoever dared to raise seditious doubts as to the benevolence of the institution of slavery should be cast out and scorned not only as a danger to the state, but destructive to the true nature of the gospel. God decreed by law that slavery be honored and obeyed, being his ordainment. Jesus himself established by law the relation of master and slave. The master must exercise without any weakness his authority over the slave. The master must not hesitate to punish him severely, whipping him with the number of lashes commensurate to the offense. All this, dear brethren, is made known to us by the recorded language of the Bible. Slavery is therefore a divine institution, ordered and sanctioned by God. Therefore, with all the authority invested in me by the church, I, Reverend Thornton Stringfellow of the state of Virginia, order you to honor slavery and not to discuss it on the basis of false moral premises.
You all pay attention to me. And you too pay attention when I'm talking to you. Here's where you look when you find yourself in front of a white man. Here, at the toe of his boot. Now, you over there, I want you to repeat. Thank you, master.
Thank you, master.
Yes, master.
Yes, master.
Please, master.
Please, master.
And you, never look a white man in the eye. You hear me? Never. Look at me.
Thank you, master. Efficiency payments. Without them, county archives sure would be our home mess, but fortunately I'm the only one that can handle these here records. What would it be, file 8,266 land L? Paid though.
Better watch out. Just saw a rat in there.
Oh, he don't bite.
Rat as big as a cat.
That's Mickey.
Nicely in place, eh?
Here it is.
Now, Stu, I don't see so well. Why haven't they yet learned how to turn out a legible policy? Can you read it?
Sure can. Got good eyesight. I'll just read the essentials, huh? The object covered by insurance in the policy is Negro slave, name of Charles. Beneficiary being covered in the event of slave drowning or causing damage to third parties or self-destruction, sabotage, smallpox, or insanity? Piece missing here. Ed by Mickey.
Who's Mickey?
The register a while back.
Well, which is it? Insanitation or insanity?
Well, what's the difference? The insurance company don't pay no-how. And this here's the inventory list. Feet and ankles insured, likewise shin bone, knee, and thigh bone. Genital area, nothing worth insuring here. Liver covered. Also heart. I guess he's got one. Teeth. Can't insure what he ain't got. How long you insuring him for? 1 year policy, all right? You ain't gonna last no longer than that. Anything else?
I believe not.
All right, then. Sorry, who's got a pen? Pen?
Here's one.
Thank you, sir.
Don't mention it.
Here, sign here. Clearly and legibly. Full name on the dotted line. Johann Jerome Gutenberg.
Napoleon. Nero. Julius Caesar. Gabriel. Alexander the Great. Lucifer. Name. Judas.
Butterfly. Peter.
Achilles.
Samson.
Excuse us, sir. My colleague and I are here to conduct an inquiry. May we ask you a few questions?
Yes, please, master. I'm at your disposal.
You're here, as it were, to be sold, no?
Of course.
We are truly appalled, sir. We can imagine how you must feel, your fear, your indignation.
On the contrary, why, in my career, I have always been very lucky. I've had masters, each one more humane than the next.
But haven't you ever been treated brutally, whipped, beaten, tortured?
In our profession, what counts is to do one's duty. Don't listen to all those stories about the various Uncle Toms and Simon Legrees and so on. It's all nonsense. The truth is that we are valuable merchandise. And have you seen the prices in the market? I know it. I cost more than $2,000. And can you imagine a fool, excuse the expression, a fool of a master who would whip and maim a capital of over $2,000? No! If a slave is a respectable slave, his master treats him with kid gloves because it takes only one scar, one single scar, and plop, down shoots the price. You know, the client is suspicious.
But, sir, surely you must realize the injustice of your situation, the violation of your liberty, your freedom.
If you speak of freedom, sir, I must tell you something. I am a worker, and workers are not free and never will be. If you speak of my condition, I will quickly say, I don't pay taxes. I'm housed, fed, and clothed by my employer. I work a short week. My medical care is free. I get a Christmas bonus and retirement or permanent disability at the expense of my employer. Without mentioning this, that in time of war, I am not even obligated to military service.
Oh, but if you're not even paid...
You know, I see the ones which you gentlemen call freed slaves or liberated workers out from morning till night, working like horses to make ends meet, and they never do. So, just tell me then, what's the difference between us slaves and liberated workers? Huh?
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Who? Me?
Yes, you. You're a dishonor to your race.
Quit waving that camera around, will you?
All right, but with all the thousands of tormented slaves there are in this country, we have to run into that puppet, that wretched collaborator. I beg your pardon, madam. We didn't mean to disturb, but may we...
Come, but of course, please.
But who are these gentlemen?
Europeans. To be precise, they're Italians. Journalists. They've come here to the South to conduct an inquest. Is that the proper expression? On slavery. Indeed, they seem to be quite shocked.
What is their religion?
They're Catholics, I believe. You are Catholic, are you not?
Yes, Roman Catholic.
Well, they shouldn't feel too shocked. After all, their Pope, who's most generous with his excommunications, has yet to excommunicate a traitor in black flesh. Unless they eat it on a Friday.
Excommunication? Catholic priests here in the South, between one Our Father and another Hail Mary, they raise goats and slaves. And I must confess, they know their business. The last 7 males I bought were sold to me by the St. Inigo Jesuits in Maryland. Finest bunch I ever bought.
But why are they here, then?
I could be wrong, but perhaps it's because they too are slaves. You know how Catholics are. Slaves to the fascination of sin. Perhaps it might be their oppositionist instinct. You know Europeans, ever since the French Revolution, they've been attacking everything.
But, madam, times have changed. Rousseau, Diderot, Voltaire.
Now it's Catholics who read the devil's own books. Oh, what would His Holiness in Rome have to say about that?
Please, please, these gentlemen are my guests, and I myself have allowed them to move freely about the house, so they can learn who really are the slaves and masters here. Senator, don't, please. No chicken bones, I beg of you. I've had to take 2 of them to the veterinaries already this week. Well, at this point, I have a suggestion that might enlighten our friends from Italy. All of you at this table are distinguished people, and it would be most illuminating to hear your frank and authoritative views on the subject of slavery. For you know what Europeans say about us, that we have a guilt complex and won't talk about it.
I agree, and I shall speak first. We cannot hide slavery any more than we can hide an erupting volcano. a forest fire, or leprosy. In my own case, it is true that I have freed my slaves because they were stupid, foul-smelling, sad, and bothersome. I'm an aristocrat. I believe in freedom, but not equality. That is my statement. Signed, John Randolph of Roanoke.
I'm Professor Thomas R. Zoo. In history, we know that every great civilization was founded on slavery. Let us take the classic examples of Greece and the Rome from whence you gentlemen come. It's God's and nature's law that man attempt to prevail over his fellow man. Till one becomes the master, one becomes the slave. Let us remember that God is white, and as long as God is white, we will prevail over all other races.
Sorry, Professor. What was that you said?
God is white, and as long as God is white, we shall prevail over all other races.
Beg your pardon, Professor, but with all this confusion, would you mind repeating?
God is white, and as long as God is white, we shall prevail over all other races.
Thank you very much. Any other viewpoints?
Perhaps I, too, may say something to these gentlemen from Europe. I am not a Southerner. My name is Harriet Beecher Stowe, and I'm from New England. I've been here but a few days, but even in that short a span, I've formed a personal opinion. May I state it?
Please do.
Even if I share the universal opinion that the black race is indisputably inferior to all other races, I must, on the other hand, also state that slaves are of human origin and do have an embryonic intelligence.
Oh, really?
I do not hesitate to tell you that I entertain for the suffering slave a degree of sympathy which equals the disgust I hold for those who make him suffer. I am an American who no longer understands her Southern kinsmen, and this tragic fact distresses me deeply. I can feel it. Yes, I can feel it. The wind has changed. It has turned. Are we to have a thunderstorm? And is this not a forecast of even more violent storms that may cause our great country's unity to falter? I have heard God's voice, and his word has told me to write a story, to write a book. I think I'll call it Uncle Tom's Cabin, and it is my great hope that it will enlighten and ease our souls.
No!
One of the reasons why the United States is such an advanced country is because of not only slavery, but the slave trade. We know that slavery was financed from places like New York, Rhode Island, Newport, and Boston.
One of the reasons Wall Street was created in the first place was to finance the slave industry. Everything from buying slaves to even mortgaging them.
What you see is not only the building of more ships, which employs workers, you're seeing the building of insurance companies because Africans are revolting and you need to have insurance policies. You see the construction of banking because these voyages have to be financed. And therein, you begin to see the seeds, the kernels of an advanced economic system. And the rise of capitalism is clearly on the backs of slavery and the enslaved Africans.
It was astonishing to me that many
I'm mad. We should all be mad, man. We should all be angry because of what's going on right now.
Law enforcement sources tell CNN Luke admitted that he shot worshippers in cold blood as they gathered for a Bible study Wednesday at the historic Emmanuel AME Church. His chilling motive? One source tells CNN that the 21-year-old wanted to start a race war.
God, nothing ever changes here. Why does this keep happening over and over again? I was born in Greensboro, North Carolina in 1963, into a world where white superiority was rarely questioned. As a child, the only black people I ever interacted with in a meaningful way were the people who worked for us. I loved them like family. I felt a huge amount of sadness as a kid seeing how they and other African Americans were treated in the South. I didn't understand it. I knew something was deeply wrong, but it was not okay to talk about it. My longtime friend and producing partner, Sally Holtz, and I shared a similar upbringing.
You know, I felt it. It was confusion, it was crazy making, and anger.
Like Sally, the sorrow, anger, and lingering questions about the racist South of my childhood shadowed me into adulthood. I never understood how much my own uncomfortable journey to talk about this was connected to an untold history of our nation.
You know, it's hard to be black. The world controlled by white folks. Du Bois said we always have the double consciousness. You're trying to be black, and meanwhile you got a white ghost hovering over your head that says, if you don't do this, you'll get killed. If you don't do this, you won't get no money. If you don't do this, nobody will think you're beautiful. If you don't do this, nobody will think you're smart. That's the ghost.
But to do this, we have to recognize that we as white people have benefited enormously from our privilege at the expense of other people. The cost of this prejudice and inequality has come far too high a price. Why are we so afraid to face the possibility?
A real difference in how we treat each other, how we think about each other. And I guess quite honestly, I'm not sure how it can be fixed.
Could she be right? Is there really no way out of this? One thing I know for sure is that oppression against African Americans has been relentless throughout our history. This history is not just in the past. It's still very much alive today.
The pain is constant whether you're looking at something that happened on television and, you know, or if you went to the grocery store. Mom and I both have been to two of the popular stores here on the island and have felt, and as Lynn had talked about her experience at the pizza parlor. So, you know, it's not that we cannot forgive. It's not easy to forgive. You know, if someone's standing on your foot and you're still standing on it, and every time, again, that wound gets opened when we, Ferguson, you know, I mean, you know, we all know what's in the news. And so it's just a constant reopening of an old wound. And that we are still just impacted.
Move it, remove it, remove it, remove it, move it, remove it, remove it, remove it, remove it,
Spend all your time waiting for that second chance, for a break that would make it okay. There's always some reason to feel not good enough, and it's hard at the end of the day. I need some distraction. Oh, beautiful release. Memories seep through my veins. Let me be empty. Oh, weightless, and maybe I'll find some peace tonight. In the arms of the angel, fly away from here, from this dark, cold hotel room, and the endlessness that you fear. You are pulled from the wreckage of your silent reverie. You're in the arms of the angel. May you find some comfort here. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us how we used to be. Everybody's searching for a hero. People need someone to look up to. I never found anyone who fulfilled my needs. A lonely place to be, and so I learned to depend on me. I decided long ago never to walk in anyone's shadow. If I fail, if I succeed, at least I'll live as I believe. No matter what they take from me, they can't take away my dignity. Because of greatness
Yeah, so that's really difficult to watch, and but that's really what happened, you see.
You guys asking if this is real.
Yeah, so this was this was a depiction of a book that was written for that at that time for this experience. So it is as real as it gets. You know, again, it's really difficult to watch, and I'll recommend the movie for you. You can watch it on your private time and learn more about it. But it's a fantastic movie made by some Italian producers, filmmakers, and it's a really good depiction of the time. You know, it's not something like Django, but it's really as close as it gets to the truth. So obviously we know the transatlantic slave routes, which is really what is depicted here. You can see the size of what went to Brazil, the size of what went to the Caribbean, and then to the United States. The difference in the United States is that the United States wanted to have a full grip and control of the enslaved Africans here. I think the first group to bring Africans to Virginia were the Dutch people.
Jasmine or Yasmin has a question.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Wali.
Hi.
So my question is that if they wanted slave to be in nice condition to work for them, then why they kept them so naked? Like why they kept them, like why they didn't provide them clothes? Like they were so ill-treated, like they were like fully naked.
Yes, so that's a fantastic question. So the first thing first of all, they don't, again, you got to understand the concept of making a slave, and that's why I had to define what a slave is earlier. Imagine even those who were collaborators from any part of this category that we've made, the three categories, they too were slaves because they were made to do whether willingly or unwillingly what the slave drivers wanted. Okay, that's important to know. And part of what it means to have a slave is to really not have to invest in this commodity, because again, you are, so it's that at that moment you're talking about a commodity at its primordial value. It's a commodity because if you buy it at that time, you buy a commodity that you can then develop. You know, that you can choose to clothe it or whatever you want to do with it. That's the mentality. I mean, this crime of a period is of it's unforgivable, to be honest with you. So that's why they kept them like that. To demoralize them, to, you know, you saw the guy, what the guy was saying, that they had to castrate them. But even that became a really good business because they realized that they could make the slaves, the enslaved people, and have them reproduce and then sell their children.
So this was all the process of dehumanizing them.
Exactly.
And reducing their self-esteem, right?
Exactly, all of that. And making them as cheap as possible to sell for wholesale.
And also, they cannot raise their voice against the wrong thing, right?
Don't forget, even at this time, they don't speak the language.
Oh yeah, that That was the thing.
And many of them rebelled. Many of them, oh yeah, there are lots of revolt. There's revolt every possible period. But don't forget, this guy's got the Maxim, right? They got the guns. So even though some of the rebellions succeeded, but always with heavy casualties, and very little of that succeeded, because again, you're talking about real formidable soldiers with heavy weaponry at that time, you see.
Thank you, Dr. Wali.
You're welcome. So a lot of people are wondering if slavery is what brought racism, or racism is what brought slavery, and it's like the chicken or the egg, you see. And the answer to the chicken and the egg theory or riddle is that the chicken actually came with the egg, you see. So it's inevitable that racism is what drives slavery and still drives it today. And it's the notion of the survival of one group at the burden of another. So, we probably learned about Dred Scott. In the United States, it's important that you guys keep the Dred Scott case in your syllabus or curriculum, because it's a very important aspect of American history. Dred Scott really was the one that exposed the intention of the U.S. construct, because he was a freed, enslaved person, and wanted to vote and would not be allowed to vote because they said he's not an American citizen, and the court ruled against him that no Negro at any time whatsoever is able to become an American. So you can see some of the challenges that that people of African descent have gone through from the beginning. And when we see the Black Lives Matter movement today, many of us forget to comprehend that this is long-standing. It's the same group and the same movement that led to the Civil War, and then that led to the civil rights movement, and much more between that. So much sacrifices have been demanded from the people of African descent in America, that it is important for us to put that understanding always in our mind, and really not partake in those who say, how dare that, or why this? Because no human being, not Europeans or Asian or any other people, can go through the same challenges and not even given a break at any point in time, still going through these challenges and be expected to have everything intact. And all the fights that the African American visionaries have fought for and achieved has always been for the benefit of the all. Look at the civil rights movement. A lot of people don't know today that without the civil rights movement, many foreigners would have no chance in this country, including Asians, including some other Europeans for that matter, certainly including all the Africans and South Americans or Latin America. So it's important to see what the struggle of humanity is. This is really a challenge of our humanity. of the depth of our humanity, whether it is from the religious perspective or evolutionary perspective. It's the decorum is unprecedented, really. So I mean, as I mentioned, there is so much here, but I want to give room for more questions, and maybe I can answer with some of these slides, because I've created so many, I didn't have enough time to put it all together for you. But don't forget that, you know, in the United States, you know, slavery took its toll, and you know, President Lincoln decided to end it by war, whether it's for political purpose or just to keep the Union intact. Really, he just could not bear the moral burden of the dominion of one people and the suffering of another. He recognized that, and he was able to encourage the whole nation to rise up against that, and that led to war. And fortunately, we won that war, but Lincoln had to pay with his life. Unfortunately, the president that came after Lincoln rolled roll back all the plans that were put in place to reconcile the people to a moral standard, to human, to restore their humanity and some dignity and grace by, making some little piece of reparations, and unfortunately, not all of them, not many people. Some did get the promised mule and 40 acres. Some did, and I have it here in the slide, and who did that, but most did not. Those who did get it, they fare quite well in the African society today, and those who did not, we see what they're still struggling with. Okay, and after that, having rolled that back and then given rise to the KKK group, and then the Ferguson case, which says we settle for separate but equal, then fueled by this KKK group saying that definitely keep the Africans apart from the Europeans. People of African descent and people of European descent in America. And having done that, we see the repercussions in many parts of society. It's been such a struggle, and again, for such a long period of time, right? And that we are still in that challenge today. And that obviously is where we are. And people have paid such a great toll, such heavy a price for bringing the best of our humanity out. And it's going to take each and every one of us to continue to spread this light, because that is the purpose of knowledge. Yes, it emburdens us with the right decorum. It emburdens us with having known the right thing, that we also do it. So I will stop here and wait for your questions. I want you to have many. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wale. Let's show our appreciation by giving him a round of applause or a thumbs up. If you go to the reaction button or unmute yourself to clap. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Wale. Very good.
Yes. So the floor is open for any of you if you have questions, or if you want him to clarify any point that he made, or if you would like to add to the discussion. So we have about 10 minutes, but I'm gonna ask if Dr. Wale would be available to stay longer than we have 5 minutes. So for those of you that have classes at 4:45, you can go to your classes, but if you would like to hang around to find out more about Dr. Wale and his work with African views, or if you would like him to clarify any point that he made,
And also Mrs. Berry Green from Women's Federation for World Peace is here. So if you would like to ask any questions, please unmute your mics and ask your questions. Thank you.
Yes, I am available and I'm very glad to be of any help. So please, and feel free to ask any question, even if I've not presented it in this, I've not made a presentation on it in this short class, because the answer might be in one of the slides, or I might be able to answer it anyway. So feel free to ask anything in regards to the transatlantic slave trade or racism or the race relations or slavery in its entirety, or any part of that related to American or African history. Please.
Dr. Wale is a good resource. Remember, your final paper is centered around 400 years of slavery, the year of return for people of African descent, and also looking at Africa and Africans and relationship between Africa, Africans, and people of African descent. All right, so he has a lot of resources, as you can see, and I'm sure he has more. Feel free to unmute and ask him any questions. Dr. Wale, do you mind to provide your email address or how to reach you if students want to reach you?
Certainly, certainly. Let me type it in the chat. Okay, how do I do that now? Here. Wait a minute. Oh, there you go.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Wally, I must say I thank you for your presentation. Hi, students. I don't want to interrupt the students asking a question, but I just want to say thank you for sharing, the information you have shared with us. And it's like that video, it was so heartrending to see it. You mentioned that it's a movie. What is the name of that movie?
It's called Goodbye, Uncle Tom. I will provide you all of these short notes. It's Goodbye, Uncle Tom. A fantastic movie. I recommend it. Just make sure you watch it with objectives, a clear mind, and also watch it with some responsibility. It's very well done. It has some humor in it, but it's a very, very heartrending movie. Yeah.
My, oh my.
Yeah.
I in the past, I normally avoid looking at some of these, like video or whatever it is, because it's so painful.
It is painful.
So I say to myself, what can we do now to change things? Because, sometimes you say slavery is alive and well, just in another form. How do we really and truly change the now? What can we do? We can't ignore it. We can't push it aside. It's there. What can we do?
Yeah, and it's because we don't know enough, and it's because our pedagogic system is not allowing us to know, because it intends to protect Western civilization. And this is why it is very important that we see the rise of India, we see the rise of China, because it provides us some diversity, the notion of diversity, in the sense that prosperity is not endemic to one particular ethnic group, that it's a human capacity. And if given the opportunity and the chance, everybody can attain it. And that becomes a benefit for the whole world. So you see, we are getting close to it, but we're still struggling because we have parties who don't agree with that. And that's just pure narcissism, So, but again, we all have to be cultured. We can't just predispose ourselves to our primordial instincts. There must be trade-offs. We must learn, just like we learn religion. It is possible to learn harmony and understanding and prioritize peace. It is possible. And I don't think anything is more important than to do that. But we have to be equipped with the right information, and many of us aren't. The type of information we get in schools as we've grown up, it's far from what ought to be. And if we're not telling each other the truth, we go into the world with all these illusions and disillusions and begin to hurt ourselves and point fingers without understanding. So we bear that responsibility. We do. So I'm expecting questions. If you have questions, please do share it.
Questions or comments, don't be shy. I know some of you have to run on to classes, but if you don't have class, you can hang around for a few more minutes, and Dr. Wale is happy to, discuss with you. Maybe if you don't have questions, you can just share a little bit about what African Views is about and your work.
Oh, I don't want to self-promote. I think it's so important to get this information out there for you guys and have a better understanding of humanity, because it's critical that we all do. When a people have undergone such pain over a long period of time across generations, this gets interpreted into the genetic codes. We know that now. Not only are people supplanted into a new phenotype where they must survive and understand, and all the challenges that they face in doing so, yeah. So you begin to see and understand people when you see them struggling. You can see, and it's a beautiful thing that you can see, because that allows you to even get in touch with yourself. You can empathize, and you'll see the growth in you as well once you begin to have this clarity. This is what's important. And this healing must occur, especially between Africans and the diaspora and Africans and the rest of the world. Of course, forgiveness is incredibly necessary, but people have to forgive themselves first, those who needs to be forgiven, right? Especially here in the diaspora. But right now, many people are pointing fingers and saying this and saying that, and that's often not too close to the truth.
I have a quick question.
Yes, please.
I read that the Bible was used to justify slavery, and then the Africans made it their path to freedom. So is the reason why Africans felt like slavery was something that was, they normalized it when they captured, the enemy or whatever, their own enemies within their own continent. Did they use the Bible as a form of justification?
That's a good question. And so, okay.
And I'm sorry, was it the Christian Bible or was it the Muslim Bible?
That's right. That's what I wanted to clarify. So yeah, actually both. And this is how it happened. Don't forget there was a crusade, right? Yeah, in the Middle Ages. There was a crusade that went to loot India and the Middle East. But here, in the African context, religion has been the primary impetus. Because even when trade was normalized, people still tried to proselyte once religions came into play. In many African language, the Islamic religion is interpreted for instance, in the Yoruba language as Imo, Lile, which means wisdom by force. Knowledge by force, religious knowledge by force, that's enforced knowledge, okay, or difficult knowledge. So the Muslims' decree was, if you cannot be made a Muslim, then you must be a slave because you're no use. So they rounded up slaves like that, and they conquered a lot of territory. There's a lot of jihad wars across Africa especially West Africa and East Africa as well. Huge part of East Africa. So there you can see that religion plays a very important role. And this is what's interesting. When the first mover, okay, those waging the war, whatever race they belong to, for instance, in the case of the Islamic religion, they are the Arabs, right? So the Arabs will encounter, the first encounter would be some Africans who are very peripheral, whether it's the Berber or the Tuaregs and so on and so forth. And they mix with them, and they transfer this intention into them. They're cultivated by religion, and they carry the war forth. So by the time the war gets to the southern part of Africa, to the sub-Saharan Africa, it already has a face of African. You see what I mean? So it already had a face of Africa, so it already had an African face. And so people are like wondering, what's wrong with you? Where are you from? What type of religion is this? By the time you could make any sense of it, you're either in chains or head is hanging on a spear. So this really made religion a big culprit. Now, as the Islam was coming from the north, now you have a new wave coming from the south, from the sea, from the oceans, and they bring in Bible. So the Africans really got it, both ends. And so, yeah, again, the Bible was used definitely to disarm the Africans, okay, and also many indigenous people. So, and also used to as a palpable method of making the slave. And that has been so effective, and so effective even till this day.
So then the reason why we don't hear about it, like the slavery, the impact of Islam slavery on Africa versus European slavery on Africa, is because they were like more modernized than Islam, you would say?
That's a fantastic question. You give me goosebumps as you say that. I think it's because of who's writing the history. You know, one of the things that propelled civilization in Europe was the printing press. So information was able to circulate far more quickly. In other parts of the world, especially in the African parts, you know, people wrote on tablets and stuff like that. And that was, you know, it didn't quickly transcribe or circulate. So information didn't circulate quite quickly. I mean, there are other things, other methods that were used, whether it's musical or echo, whatever the case may be, or emissaries, but it wasn't as efficient and effective as Europe, and that really gave Europeans a lot of edge. Before that got to any other society, the Europeans were there making waves. Now, the reason in the New World, for instance, why we didn't speak or understand much about the Arabs was because that was completely out of the context. You don't, the Americans, right? The new Americans, let's say the New World people, because Americans is every one of us today. But at that time, they were all Protestants, right? Don't forget, it's the Protestants that came from Europe to be here. So they were all Protestants. And yeah, so they were all Protestants. And their interest was to make sure that only the Bible makes sense. So there was no Muslims. So there was no even any talk about Muslim being a superior slave driver in this case, because don't forget, it started as a competition between both of them. So that really made many Africans thought, oh, actually maybe Islam is an antidote to Christianity, and in order to taunt Christianity, that's why many of our people fell for Islam. Only some to realize much later in life that Islam was even just perhaps even a bigger evil to our people. But again, some of us are still understanding that. But it's difficult when it comes to beliefs, you see. It's very difficult. It's very difficult. But, you know, again, religion could be used as a tool. It could be used to do good things or do bad things. You know, even an enslaved person could be used to do good things or bad things. And, you know, that's where the world is. And in most cases, it was used to break the people. And even then, Christianity did not allow, you know, the enslaved people to worship in the same church. They couldn't. As a matter of fact, I have some footages of that here that I could show you. It's when you see, this is one of the reasons you watch that movie. They couldn't. And Christianity made it clear that and what's really interesting is that Christianity made it conscience clear for Europeans that it was okay to enslave the inferior people. And oftentimes, when a new society is cultivated, this came much after, instead of having to wage war or use the Maxim gun, they'll just send a preacher to go subdue the people, you know, convince them that God is peaceful and all of that. And then the soldiers would come and take over, or the conquistadors would come. Many, many indigenous societies were destroyed that way. So it has become a tool for those who intended to use it that way. And unfortunately, that is the truth. You know, today we're still grappling with it, to the understanding of, I mean, who could deny the fact that God exists? And we need one way or the other to make this connection. In most cases, we only deal with what we know. Few of us are searching deeper to look at other variations, but the challenge is still there. And the damage that religion is doing or has done, especially to people of African descent, is very impressive. It's very, very deep.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Wale. It's been a pleasure having you in this class for such a powerful presentation. And I hope that we're able to continue this discussion, you know, sometimes very soon, because as you mentioned, it's very important for people, especially students in the writing intensive African history class on Africa and the transatlantic slave trade. So it's very, very important to have this type of you know, resource information, and you know, you as a professional, you know, to come speak to us this evening. And I want to thank everybody that, you know, stayed behind. Let's give a round of applause to Dr. Wale. If you can unmute your mic. So
Wait, Dr. Remy,
yes.
wait. I think it'd be unfair if I didn't conclude with this. You
okay,
know,
sure.
Thank you. So obviously, we're talking about humanity here because, again, it is also the Europeans that stopped slavery, and it's important to put that into context, right? So many reasons for that to happen. First of all, there was inflation in this commodity. There's just, you know, there was fear that it was getting too much. And then there were those who, through their faith, also started to stand up for humanity, saying these people are human, they're humans. Why are you treating them this way? And at the beginning, those who raised voice like that were killed, even though they were Europeans. But then, you know, because of those who resisted, those who really believed in their Christian value, and Christian this was, also stood their grounds, and they made sure that they persisted to convince the society. And many groups were created for the emancipation of the enslaved. They passed this legislation, I think started in the UK, to stop slavery. So the first thing was to stop the importation. So they said nobody should go back to Africa to import slaves to bring the people here. That was the first thing. And then, even then you have pirates who were still doing it, and they had to go and fight these pirates, right? Then it became a crime. And for this reason, they decided that, look, it seems like there's something wrong on the ground. And they used that opportunity to begin to colonize the African nations. So that's why they had to set off administrative posts and say, okay, now actually, we need to control all these territories because you guys are crazy. You still, the slave trade is still going on. And because they did that, they took credit for stopping the slave trade that they started. And that's a merit one way or the other, because if they hadn't stopped, the Africans were not strong enough really to withstand the firepower of the Europeans, and that slavery would have continued and would have probably destroyed the world as we know it today. Just imagine, it would have been terrible. Whether there would have been too many Africans and they would have rebelled, and maybe Africans are ruled the world, which would be good, or they would have found it easy to kill more people. But again, we're talking about some merits here, and I think it's important to put that in there, that obviously it was, that effort that made them stop the slave trade. But also a very important episode, which for academics very important, is the rise of Haiti. Don't forget, there were also many rebellion activities that happened during this period as well. And it was the rebellion in Haiti that led Haiti to become the first African nation in the world. As a matter of fact, its independence came at a point where many countries did not even have their own independence. So Haiti, being independent that way, and in such proximity in the Americas, also put the fear of God in many slave owners, and also did encourage a lot of rebellion as well. You may know Nat Turner and and so many others who rose up. There's so many of them, and I think you should get yourself familiar with it. However, all of that, be as it may, still come under the context of humanity, and we all just trying to figure it out. Really, we all trying to figure it out. And the difference between each and every one of us is really the amount of knowledge that we have access to, and our innate capacity to process, understand, and interiorize any knowledge that we acquire in order to perceive all these activities, both in historical, current, and future context. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wally. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Dr. Wally. What about Jamaica? I didn't hear you mention Jamaica in it all,
I know, I made
discussion also.
What's that?
Mrs. Green is Jamaican, so she can add to the discussion on the slave trade and its
if I begin with the Caribbean, we would be here till tomorrow, because I mean, just the Maroons, and Trinidad and Tobago, the steel drums. I mean, that's, again, the beauty of our humanity is what's so interesting, because we're so resilient as a people in general, because look at all the challenges and yet still find a way to rise from the ashes. Because of all the restrictions, a new culture is developed in Trinidad, such as the steel pan. The steel pan is an amazing instrument, and it's so simplistic. Just imagine that alone. Then look at Jamaica. Look at Jamaica. Look at the culture of the Maroons. Okay, look at the concept of reggae and the joy that reggae has brought the world. Look at the beauty of the Jamaican people. Again, this is all over the Caribbean. And for what? All because of sugar. It's funny, isn't it? But yeah, I wish we had more time. I would. We have so much to talk about in the Caribbean.
Thank you, Dr. Remy, for inviting me on this Zoom call. And Dr. Wally, thank you so much. It was very, very informative. And your students, they are beautiful. And I like the Cecilia. She asked so many very interesting questions.
I tried. I tried. But
Yeah,
I
you were
wanted
not
to ask
afraid.
you guys, I know you heard about Nigeria and that
Right.
the armed forces shot 12 people. How do you feel about that? I mean,
Yes, 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 yes. I got some information today. I didn't hear, but I got some information today, and it's very painful that these things are happening. But there's so much behind it. Just Dr. Wally
You
touched
have
on
to mute one of your computers or phones.
Say again?
You have to mute one of your equipment. Echoing.
Oh, touch it at the top, at the very top.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. Today this class really just touch the basis for which all of this is happening and still continue to happen in Africa and all over the entire diaspora. These things, I believe, slavery is like in another form. It's still existing, but our young people, like Cecilia and all these young people that is on this call, the charge is yours. We should not leave a world like this for you, but together we can find a way how to support each other. The diaspora have to support each other. Africa, on a whole, everybody is running back to Africa right now. I mean, Marcus Garvey made that call how many years ago, right? So then after that, you had people like, what his name is again? What the American hero name again? Luther King and all the others who came after that. It's because he came here and saying back to Africa and making people feel proud of their heritage. Now people are going back to Africa to see how we can take back our country, our place, well, not our whole continent. How can we do that? And at the same time, you have people killing off each other. Because you made something, you expressed something that I was not aware of, and that was the Muslim impact on the slave trade. I probably didn't pay attention, just like you said, because everything was focused on Christianity. But the truth is, they don't believe we are children of God. So that can be a part of it. And it's not that you're condemning a group, but what you're seeing and what you're hearing is everybody play a part in destruction of the other person's life because we want to control each other. And right now, this is really what is happening. Everybody trying to control the next person. And so you end up enslaving people, So how are we going to change this? Our leader, Dr. Moon, she went to Africa, and she did quite a few work there in terms of bringing people to a certain consciousness. Say, you can't be hurting each other like that. We need peace. And I heard you, Dr. Wally, allude to, peacekeeping. How do we bring peace to solve the problem? So it's the same religious group that created that. We have to go back to that, to that root and try to change this. Because our young people, they deserve to live in a world that is free of slavery.
Yes. Am I? Yes. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you brought some few important things up. I think we need to. One of the areas that we needed to touch on was the area of economy. How this really started to fuel the economy of the United States. And this is going to be directly connected to colonialism, and it's going to be directly connected to what is happening in Nigeria today. But I want you to understand, for instance, that it was the commoditization of humanity, in this case, the Africans as slaves, that emboldened and encouraged the creation of banks in the United States, that encouraged and emboldened the creation of stock markets. This is how the Wall Street in New York, I'm not talking about hustler, okay? The Wall Street in New York was formed to raise money in order to sustain the slave industry, the slave trade, because it had to be built, chains have to be molded. Even the human beings are such commodity that were traded. They could be rented, they could be hired. You know, they could be, you could put futures on them when they would have babies, how much that would be. All of, I mean, this was a phenomenal trading concept. You got to understand, okay? Now, all of this is what really began to spread the new type of economy in the world. And when colonization became a thing, it prioritized what you call the indirect rule. And the whole point of creating a government between capitalism or socialism and all of that is the fact, right, that nations are aligned into colonial interest. Therefore, many African countries named after their resources, for simplification, were completely focused on extractive industries and not developmental industries. See? And because of that, a huge nation like Nigeria is completely focused on extractive industry. That is in its oil, in its mineral resources, agricultural resources, and all of those things. And that's why they cannot develop energy for their people, or electricity, or this or that. I mean, it goes on. A country with such brilliant people, brilliant, perhaps some of the most brilliant people in the world. Yet,
yeah, you are right. That's true.
Yeah. So, you know, unempowered. However, so when these young people, like people before them and people before those, have protested, okay, about these conditions, you need to understand that Nigeria itself is a country that is organized around religion. And this is the type of religion we're talking about, the same concept of colonialism. And this colonialism in Nigeria is such as a triple effect, right? It has a religious effect, essentially Islamic, which puts power on the jihadist hand and to control the country. So everything is like so tightened with such a hard lead that it had to implode. And that's the implosion that we're seeing right now. And the way that it's being managed is also going to reveal so many things as we experience it. Okay, so this goes back all the way to slavery and colonialism. So the ripple effect of slavery and colonialism are still with us. Slavery, essentially, are still with us. And it is perhaps going to be with us for as long as those religions have power. And yet you see how difficult it is to actually extract, to separate a man from his beliefs, or a woman for that matter, right? So what we're dealing with here is a very serious issue. But what we can do is to affirm the separation of a religion and the state affairs. Maybe that would begin to help us move forward. But ultimately, what we're seeing happening there is so long-standing. Has nothing to do with the police. The police have, you know, it's like the same here. It's like the same here. I mean, how many police
Yeah,
do you
it's
want
an
to?
opportunity to speak up.
Yeah, this is a tradition, it's a culture, and when something has become a culture, it becomes really difficult to separate from the people. But we got to continue to work hard and make sure that people are enlightened enough to begin to make this change themselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I gotta go.
Any other questions or comments? I see Anita.
No, just gratitude. Just gratitude.
Dr. Remy.
Thank you.
Hi,
Steve.
Reverend Green. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
I've been carefully listening to the conversation being carried out by your able presenter, Dr. Wale Idris, and was very, very much informed by his sayings. There was one student, I think her name is Cecilia. She made mention about how did the Christians, get involved in the slave trade. And I believe that originally Christianity's mission was for the spreading of the gospel. When Europeans came to Africa, their intentions were pure. They came with the desire to spread the word of Jesus to the African people. But when they came there, they saw the potential for enriching themselves and also their respective nations. And so they diverged from the original plan, which was to educate and elevate the African people, in the ways of Jesus Christ. So that was really a tragedy when they diverted. And they used the Bible. Many Europeans who came there were actually Calvinists. And in the book of Romans, there's a biblical passage that says, has the potter no right over the clay to make out of the same lump, one for beauty and another for menial use? So they use this biblical text to justify that they were the ones that were created for beauty. And, the Africans were created for menial use. So they kind of dwell in that kind of mindset. So I think that religion has played a big part in slavery because of people's misinterpretation of biblical text. So I think what we really need now is a new understanding of scriptures, both the Quran and also the Bible. They need to be reformed at their root so that the traditional views that they have entertained can be further elucidated so that everybody can find common grounds in the same word of God. So I am propagating for a new expression of truth, a truth that can bring all the diverse faiths into harmony so that humanity as a whole can find settlement. They can reconcile with one another, between white and black. All the nations can come into harmony. So I think that the time has come for this kind of appearance of the word, because as a religious man, I don't believe God is going to leave us on our own. I think God is desperately trying to be involved in human history. And so we are wanting to prepare a way for God to come in and to enlighten us with a new expression of truth. So I want to say thanks to the Professor Idris and also Dr. Remy for inviting me on this call. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Reverend Green, for your input. Thank you very much, Mrs. Green. And Dr. Wale, I don't even know how to thank you, so thank you for always heeding to the last minute calls. This has been a very powerful presentation. And, I wish I could, steal you every week, to come speak to our students, but you're certainly welcome, to come back. Of course, Reverend, the Greens, Reverend and Mrs. Green, you're always welcome to come to our class because information is to get, as Dr. Wale said earlier. And given that last year, 2019, was the 400 years of, the transatlantic slave trade. And, as Mrs. Green mentioned, many people in the diaspora, not only Black Americans in the United States, but so many people in the Caribbean and other places have gone to Africa, whether to go seek their roots in terms of reconnecting with their ancestry or seeking some sort of spiritual liberation because of what's going on, or the way that racism has impacted our lives, or people have moved there permanently on a permanent basis because they don't see a connection in the diaspora, so, and others have they go back and forth just to see. And we need to find a way and continue to discuss ways to empower people to reconnect, for Africans to reconnect with Africans in the diaspora, and for Africans in the diaspora to reconnect with people of African descent. So for our final paper, 400 years after slavery, looking at the year of return, and what next for people of African descent, including Africans who are in the diaspora and those on the continent. And as many people may be aware, Ghana last year offered a lot of courtesy citizenship to returnees, African descent in the diaspora, and many other countries followed suit. So our next discussion, I would like us, if whenever you're available, to find ways of reaching out to various individuals or communities on what next. How can we bridge the divide in terms of racism, the racism that is plaguing many places, around the world, and mentioned, unfortunately, Nigeria also because of rivalry or, or one thing or another, and so many issues affecting, people of African descent. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for, sharing your, presence with us today. Dr. Wale, unmute yourself. Okay.
A quick shout out to my sister, Chief Anita Nana. It's good to hear your voice. I know that many of the students have left, but I would...
they'll get the recording, so it's no problem.
Yeah, but I want to make sure that we do not make these a religious discussion.
Yeah.
It's very important that we understand this is not the time to proselyte. This is not the time to, religion has nothing to do with it. If religion understands, religion would take a back seat on this particular discourse. This is very important for us, not only today, but for the future of our children and for the life of the world itself, that we prioritize reason and we prioritize truth. And for that, we must know the truth. And belief, as great as it is, should be secondary. So I want us to really keep that in mind, that especially when it comes to the experience of the past, we cannot toy with it. We cannot, we cannot play with it. We cannot even put it into the context of our trade or personal interest. or the interest of our beliefs. So it's important that we keep that in mind. We try as much as possible to keep it whole, and it's very sacred. No, we can't joke with it, and it's well, we need to make sure that it's clear for the students also that this is about what it is, and us not do it with religion. I'm sorry that the question of religion came into it because it's just so integral. There's nothing we can do but to.
I think because also you had mentioned earlier about both Islam and Christianity being used as means of saving people.
Yeah.
So, and then looking forward to today, or fast forward into the year of return and the impact of maybe religion. So I know we, started with the discussion on transatlantic slave trade, and then looking at people of African descent today all over the world. And I think one of the reasons why we have a lot of problems is the impact of religion on many communities or societies, and the problems that religion has caused around the world in shaping the way that traditional societies think, the way they run their day-to-day lives, even change their belief system drastically. I know yesterday we were on another program where, I mentioned that many Africans, especially, pretty much all over Africa, people are ashamed of their own traditional beliefs because they believe it's evil. And this is the good job that religions like Christianity have done. They did a very, very, very good job in psychologically wiping out the minds of Africans. And that I say a very good job in the sense that Africans, whether still on the continent, in the diaspora, or people of African descent, they have a loss or sense of lack of identity, or the who of who they are, like, who am I? So I think religion has a lot to play with it in terms of identity and finding the self and reconnecting the past to the present, and looking at ways we can reconnect, people of African descent with Africans or the continent in general. And I understand what you're saying. The topic should be specifically on Africa and the transatlantic slave trade, and I respect that. And I appreciate the little contributions about religion, but let us not digress. Is what Dr. Wale is calling us, to focus on, getting this message out, because many times when we want to talk about slavery, we focus on transatlantic slave trade. We don't look at the different types of slavery throughout history and the impact those types of slavery have made on Africans. And looking fast forward 400 years later, we're discussing transatlantic slave trade. So I want you to give us a conclusion to conclude this session today on, the year of return for people of African descent. What next? What should we be looking at? What should we be discussing? What should young people even know about? Because African history or African American history does not start with the slave trade, So give us your closing remarks on, 400 years later, what next?
Excellent. So you actually answered that question, because the whole purpose of the 400 years later is to reconnect with the continent. And one of the reasons that you want to reconnect is to find out what Africa truly is before the intervention, okay? Before the pollution, before the misdirection, before the arrested development. And you can only do that when you go to the motherland, when you go to the continent. Obviously, not when you just hang around the cities, but when you dig deeper into all the programmatics that's been curated for to facilitate this type of pilgrimage, if you will. You know, that's really the point. It's the same reason people of spiritual interest go to all this, go on all of this spiritual pilgrimage. They need to do that in order to reconnect with the spiritual powers of the continent, and they through that find themselves, so that they feel empowered wherever they may be in the world, that they have the content of who they truly are, and be able to develop value that would nurture their own development in order to contribute to their community significantly anywhere they may be in the world. You see, so that's one of the reasons that they need to make this pilgrimage and go and take part in these 400 years of return, a year of return. And you know, because don't forget, when they left, that exit, as a matter of fact, there were accounts of it, that there were some rituals made that it is a gate of no return. So because they went through the gate of no return when they got on the ship, you know, saying they'll never come back, they break that spell now by going back and saying that they have returned. And through that, I believe they are empowered, they are enriched. Many people are going to settle. And we have always advocated with African leaders that the countries in the African continent should extend, first of all, visa-free travel to all people of African descent in the diaspora, every single one of them in the diaspora. And also a step further, that the people of African descent in the diaspora can have a dual citizenship with any country that they belong to right now or currently. However, they're able and granted the opportunity to choose any country of their choosing in Africa as a citizen of that country that they wish to be part of. That is supposed to be part of the healing process. That extension is not a far-fetched idea. It's part of the reparation process, you see. So I hope that we begin to take the right step. I hope that the diaspora feel included, that Africa is not a choice. It is what is part of them, and nobody can take that away from them. Nobody, not even the Africans or Africa itself, that they are an integral part of Africa by birth and nation, and that they have that choice. So I encourage us to begin to continue to look in this direction.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, keep on with your discussion, Dr. Wali.
Yeah, so I hope that we continue along this direction to encourage people to go on this pilgrimage of self-finding, because it's very important. It's difficult to live in the diaspora for so long, whether you're born there or not, and yet have this image of Africa that is just based on imagination or some romantic idea. So I think it's really a good thing that you're able to connect and support, whether it's development on the ground or development where you are through that process. So I encourage everyone, old and young, students and adults, to partake in this, really to partake in it and be part of this healing that the world really needs. So that will be my summation. I thank you greatly for this opportunity. You're such a darling, a sister, and you can count on me anytime. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wale, and thank you, Reverend Mrs. Green, and thank you, Reverend Desmond Green. Thank you, Miss Anita Nana, and to all my students at the York College African History 374 class for 2020. Thank you so much for your attendance today. I certainly will post the link on the course page, and you can feel free to reach out to these wonderful colleagues anytime. The conversation continues. Thank you so much. God bless you all. Bye-bye.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Dr. Idris, I hope you and I can have conversation sometime.
Anytime. Reverend Green, I miss you. You look great.
Yeah, Dr. Remy, you look awesome.
Actually, you do look like you are. That's great.
Good to see you.
It's wonderful to see you, and Mrs. Green as well. Great.
Yes,
thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Okay.
See you soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Looking forward to our next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
God bless.